Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Blissful Living Podcast. It's Dr. Rochel Lawson, the Queen of Feeling Fabulous. And I am so happy to be here with you today. I like to say, if you like the show, please subscribe and share it with others. The more we can get the wisdom that's shared on the show out, the better we can make the world. And I also like to tell you all that this is the perfect time to find a place to sit, get something to write with, get your favorite beverage. Today, my favorite beverage is water. And tell your family to give you a few moments so that you can talk here on today's show. And while you're doing that, I'm going to thank our sponsors, All Day Cable Inc. at alldaycableinc.com. They are a telecommunications installation company located in Silicon Valley, and they install voice data and fiber optic cabling for small, medium, and very large corporations. They've been in business since 1990, and they are a woman-owned business. So if you have a need for having your network distribution set up where you can make the connection right the first time, then you want to definitely check out All Day Cable Inc. at alldaycableinc.com. The next sponsor is Blissful Living for You, and Blissful Living for You has some wonderful things happening this month. You can go to that www.blissfulliving4u.com and check out the events they're having, virtual events, shows like this beautiful podcast, the Bold Unstoppable Show, as well as special offers that they have for you to help you look and feel absolutely fabulous during this time of the year. And you might want to pick up one of the books that's on the site, The Unstoppable Woman's Manifesto, or 365 Days of Affirmations for a Year's Bliss. Anyway, if you're looking for wellness wisdom or to enhance your wealth, then you can check out Blissful Living at blissfuliving.com. Okay, so let's get into today's show. Today's show is titled How to Improve Your Mental Life Using Methods Based in Neuroscience. And my guest today is George Haymaker. And let me tell you a little bit about George. George is a former entrepreneur, former alcoholic and pain pill addict, now a neuroscience educator and coach who helps people overcome unhelpful mental patterns, improve brain performance, and rewire their brains to reflect their preferred identity. And so, hi, George. I want to welcome you to the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for saying yes. I want to jump into this very interesting conversation that we're going to have. And the first question I would like to ask you is this. Most people have heard about mindset coaching, and we know it's super important to have your mindset in the right place and be in balance. How is what you do different when it comes to transforming the brain and the mental capacity, or the mental life, the way we think and ebb and flow in our mind?
Yeah, great question. So mindset is important, but if your brain, if you're not using mindset to change your brain permanently at the neurological or root level of the brain, like where the neurons actually live, then you're not creating sustainable, long-lasting change. And what that means is that we have 85 billion neurons in our brain, and everybody's brain looks different. The way that those neurons organize and pattern themselves inside their brain is different for everyone based on all of their past experiences. So that's why all of us kind of encounter the world differently based on all the experiences we've ever had in our life. So if you want to make fundamental, long-lasting, sustainable change in your life, you have to create practices that cause those neurons to change and shift so that you're not constantly having to adjust mindset. You can make permanent changes in your mindset by undergoing certain practices that allow those neurons to shift, and you're basically changing the root system of your mind.
So what you're saying is, even though we might have a mindset that's out of balance, and most people don't don't equate the mindset as being connected to our neurological system, right? Even though that may be our mindset or the aspect of our neurological system with our mind is out of balance, we can change it. And we can change it at the root neural level, right?
It's exactly right. And mindset is a function of these neurological patterns. And so I'm sure you've heard of the term, and many people have, neuroplasticity, and that's the brain's willingness to change, adapt, and evolve. And so our brains are plastic in a sense, in that they can reshape and reform themselves if we show them how. So most of us think, our brains are what they are, and we're kind of subject to whatever they're giving us in terms of our minds. But we've actually trained the brain to create the minds that we are getting. And so our brains at any point in time are a result of everything that we've ever trained the brain to be. And so if we want to experience something different, we have to change the brain, train the brain to experience something different.
I love this. And we're going to take a break in just a few seconds. But when you think about our brains, the neuroplasticity of it has been evolving and changing and ebbing and flowing since, we were born, right? And so we are definitely a product of our environment. And we all know that our brains can be in one state, say chaos, with suffering from mental illness challenges or addiction or, too much shopping, whatever it may be. But it's what's happened over the time that's allowed those gateways in the, I want to say, functionality of our mental system or neurological system to kind of make that plasticity harden, right? So you're saying we can change the plasticity. And I do believe that. I think if any of you are listening and watching this, if you think about the time, say you were a kid and then how you evolved into the teenage years and then young adulthood and wherever you may be right now, over that course of time, your mind has changed quite a bit. And because the more experiences you have, the more things you were exposed to that might have a precursor or effect on how you think and ebb, right? So I'm loving this. We got to take a quick break, but I'll be back with George in just a few minutes on the Blissful Living podcast. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, everybody. This is Dr. Rochel Marie Lawson, the Queen of Feeling Fabulous. And we're talking about, something very, very interesting that really people don't talk about too much. And it's, using neuroscience to help us have improvement in our mental life, the way we think and the way we ebb and flow, and the plasticity of our neurological system and our mind. So I want to ask you this, George. You talk about something called the mental resource tank. What exactly is that, and why do so many people unknowingly drain it?
Yeah. So we have certain resources or assets that our brain uses to carry out, all of our daily functions and lives. And we have a certain size tank that we start each day with. It's like, a gas tank filled up with fuel. And so that resource tank is finite. As soon as we start our days, we spend those resources like we're spending gas. And so we have the ability to either fill that tank up full or not so full based on our habits and our lifestyles and our practices. And so that's part of what I help people understand, is just these concepts and then the kinds of things that they can do to make sure that their resource tank is as full as possible. Over time, we can actually expand the size of that tank by working on certain things that will grow those resources. And then we also work on how to spend them during the day efficiently so that we're not running out of resources by, say, 2:00. And so, if you have ever experienced, emotional, like as the day goes on, you get mental fatigue, you lose energy, you start getting more emotionally reactive. That's basically your brain fatiguing and giving you signals that it's running out of resources. So that's kind of the big picture of what I mean by that.
Oh, so cool, so interesting. I think you just shared quite a few nuggets of gold within the context of what you just said, and it's powerful information, because I don't think there are very many people that think of their brain as being a tank, and a resource tank where we fill it and then we deplete it, and we don't even recognize the signs and symptoms of when we're on that downward trend to depleting the reserves in the tank, so to speak.
Yeah. Yep.
This information is just phenomenal.
Yeah. So if I could just say one thing along that same note is we need to kind of look at our brains as objectively. In other words, there's something that we need to partner with them. A lot of us just take for granted this thing that sits on our shoulders. It's only 3 pounds, and it consumes about 25% of our calories every day. And it's a workhorse. It's going 24/7. Even when we're sleeping, it's working. And so we need to start to think of it more as a member of our family that needs to be cared for. And so instead of just thinking about the brain as something that is giving us whatever, what we need to start thinking about what it needs and taking care of it and establishing this partnership.
Oh, again, some wonderful, wonderful information, because, I don't even think most of the time people just go through their day and don't realize that our brains never, ever shut off. They never shut off, just like our hearts. Our hearts never, ever shut off. Not unless something from the brain tells the heart it needs to do something different, right? But generally, where you don't have any trauma, physical trauma, or anything like that happened to us, our hearts never shut off. And our brains definitely don't either. Even when we have an incident that happens up in our brains, that part might be impacted, but the rest of the brain doesn't necessarily shut down. So I think it's eye-opening and a good thing for people to remember that your brain is going, and whatever you eat, 25% of that is being utilized by your brain. So if you take in crappy stuff, then you're giving 25% of that to your brain. And, that's not going to help you to have that mental stability and neuroplasticity that you need. So now I want to ask you this, George. You say most of us are running on outdated identity models. What does that mean, and how does it impact the way we think, feel, and perform?
Yeah. The way that we figure out if we're running out of alignment or in alignment is, are we operating, are we who we are today? Is that who we want to be going forward? And so a lot of us will find out if that's not the case by the level of mental friction that we have, how much anxiety, how much mental discomfort, turmoil, emotional reactivity, negative thinking. Those are all signs that we're not operating in alignment with our identity. And so identity is made up of our values, our strengths, our traits, our belief systems, how we think, feel, and behave. And so those are all kind of constructed together to meet our psychological needs. And so the thing about identity, though, is it can change and evolve over our lifetime. And so we have developed patterns over our lives to get through life, and they might have worked at one time, but maybe they're no longer serving us well anymore. So as an example, we could have grown up in a household that was less than ideal, perhaps uncomfortable in some ways. And so as children, we learned how to get through that and survive and be safe and, figure things out for ourselves in whatever way we needed to. But we've carried those patterns with us into adulthood. And those patterns are now our identity, or they become our identity, but maybe they're no longer serving us well anymore and causing us mental friction. And so that's what I mean by, we need to always understand who it is that we want to be. What's this preferred version of ourselves that we want to be, and create alignment around that, so that we're, being that person all the time, so that we're in alignment. We don't have this mental friction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, great explanation. Thank you for sharing that, because I think it's important for us to understand the processes. And like you said, we may have been in a particular state when we were children based on our environment, survival or thriving, or, you know what I'm saying? And so we carry that baggage, so to speak, in our heads that we don't necessarily need as we, ebb and flow in our adult life. We've got to take a quick break, but we'll be right back to the Blissful Living Podcast. Okay, it's Dr. Rochel Marie Lawson, the Queen of Feeling Fabulous, and we're back with George Haymaker, and we're talking about a wonderful, super interesting subject when it comes to neuroscience and how we can utilize the neuroscience technology, so to speak, to give us the mental state that we desire to have in our life. So, I want to ask this question, George. You say people can actually retrain their brains to support the life that they want, not just cope better. How does this rewiring process actually work? What needs to happen to allow one to rewire their brain, so to speak, so that they can really live and have the life that they desire?
Yeah. So the first step is to identify what patterns aren't working in someone's life. And that's part of what I help people do, is identify what those mental patterns are. And they're typically made up of thoughts and emotions and actions that are all dynamically interwoven together. And we really deconstruct what they are and go back in their past to find out when and how they originated. And a lot of these patterns are deeply embedded and ingrained. And because there's emotion attached to them, they're very sticky. They're hard to get rid of. But we go through some exercises to weaken the grip that they have on our psyche. Things like just by virtue of understanding that they occurred many, many years ago, the origins of them, maybe when we were brought up, we now understand why that they're still with us and the power that they have. So just that recognition and kind of looking at it objectively helps loosen the grip. And then we kind of label those patterns. So we create a name for them so that they're not so personal. Like we could stand away from them and call them a name and create some distance. And then we start to understand what the cost is of carrying those patterns. How much harm is it giving us today by carrying them with us? Are they true anymore? Do they need to be true? If somebody else was experiencing them, what would we tell them about those patterns? So we're doing these things to loosen the grip. And then what happens is we start to construct new patterns in place of the ones that are harmful, that are in line with this new identity that we just talked about. And so the way we construct a new identity is by going through a person's values, really understanding what they are, their strengths, their traits, their positive traits. Really what we're designing is a new character of the person. So it's like you getting a script from a movie director that says, here's the character I want you to play in this movie. And we're going to outline like who this person is and get to know them really well. And then we're going to start acting, thinking, and feeling like this person and start to rehearse them. And then if we do that well enough and long enough and with enough intention, then we're actually going to become that person, this more ideal version of ourselves. And
Right.
So that's really what identity transformation is outlining this hypothetical, wonderful person that you've always wanted to be, and really flushing out all the details around this person, feeling what it's like going to be like to emotionally to be like them, and really have this vision of them. And you start to daydream about them. And then you start to rehearse being them in every way, shape, and form. And the more that you stay fastidious and focused on being that person and having all the new patterns which are the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of this person, that over time, weeks and months, you actually become that person and you start to leave the old one behind. And so what happens while you're doing that is the brain's neurons are shifting around and repatterning themselves
Yes.
to shape this in response to all the things you're doing to live the life of this new person. And so by virtue of the fact that the neurons have shifted, you have a physical representation in your brain that represents this new person. And so therefore that change is sustainable and long lasting because you now have the new neural patterns that represent this new identity.
So it's like exercising, basically.
Yes.
You set out, you start going out, you start going to the gym, you envision your body being fit, muscles, abs tight, everything looking really nice. And you go to the gym and you start doing it. And over time, well, yeah, your muscles in your legs, they start getting more sculpted. Your ab muscles, become more defined, and you burn more fat. So it's kind of the same context. The more you do it, the more you develop it. Even though I'm talking about the body, which is external, we can see it. It also happens with our brains and the neuroplasticity and things that go in that help us to transform into the person we want to be. We've got to take another quick break, but we will be right back with George to learn more about this fabulous information that we can begin incorporating into our lives. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Dr. Rochel Marie Lawson, and this is the Blissful Living Podcast. All righty, we are back to the Blissful Living Podcast, and this is Clean Feeling Fabulous with George, and we're talking about retraining, rewiring, and creating a mental life that we want through neuroscience. Now, George, I want to ask you this. In your experience, what's the biggest misconception that people have about high performance and success that actually holds them back mentally and keeps them trapped in that prison that sometimes they don't even know they're trapped in?
Well, I really think it's this concept around we don't understand our brains. And what we don't understand, we can't get our arms around. We can't understand that things can or can't be different. So it's really this knowledge gap. And that's really my job, is to, take down the walls around this knowledge gap and really help people be less intimidated by their brains and help them understand that they have complete control over their brain health and the mental life that the brain produces, because the mind, the mental life, emerges from the brain. And so the brain is a follower, not a leader. We're not subject to what our minds are at any moment in time. We've trained the brain to produce the mind that we have. And so it's really, your analogy around going to the gym is entirely accurate and apt. But that's really what it is. So if we just look at it like this is something we can change, it's not going to be quick and easy. There's no light switch. We don't expect to go to the gym and get instant results. We all know it's going to take 3 to 5 days a week, and the improvements are going to be gradual. But if we eat right and stay to the program, we've all experienced that we can have the type of physical change that we want. And we experience the reward from that. The exact same thing is true about the brain. And so this isn't a light switch deal. It is, if you are fastidious about approaching brain change the way that it needs to be approached, within 90 days of envisioning something different and then starting about a regimen and a training program that will shift your brain neural pathways, you can experience real significant transformational change in 90 days. And that's about the time that you would go to the gym and experience real significant physical change at the gym, or at least enough so that you're in a groove and you've had enough repetitions that you see the path. And now you can begin to understand it well enough that you can begin to self-direct and self-guide yourself from that point on. So you might need a coach for the first 90 days, like me. And then you can begin to, you understand enough of the concepts and how it works, and you've seen some results that you can begin to do this yourself.
I love it. It's similar, and again, another gym analogy, but it's you might get a personal trainer if you have been out haven't been working out for a while, right? And you work with them for a while, and then you learn the techniques and the different pieces of equipment that you can utilize to get your body right. And then you don't need them, and you go on and you continue doing it yourself and make those improvements. Same thing with you. You may work with George for 90 days or whatever you two figure out is right for you, and then after a while you won't need George, or maybe you will, I don't know, but you can make that decision, and then you'll have the tools to basically keep your transformation going onward and forward. I love it. Wow, the time goes so fast, particularly when we're talking about something as deep as this subject. I really do believe that we need more education around this. I need people to understand that there are no quick fixes in anything. We just didn't overnight be born and then we're 25 or whatever. It's not like that. There's a gradual process, and there's a reason for the gradual process. And the same thing with our health and well-being and our mindset. We get into some stuff, and sometimes we don't even know what we into or how deep we're in it until we realize we need to make a change. And it's not an overnight change. It happens gradually. So I want to thank you for sharing this information, George. And you all, his show and his information will be in the show notes. And so you'll be able to reach out to him. And George, is there like any last words of wisdom you want to share within 15 to 30 seconds with the audience?
Yeah, well, hopefully from this, people are looking at their brains a little differently now. I encourage you to get out of the passenger seat of your car, and your brain is driving currently, maybe so. Get out of the passenger seat, go around the car, get in the driver's seat, put your hands on the wheel, ask your brain to move over into the passenger seat, and you're going to start driving the show. Your brain is there to partner with and for it to serve you, but it does have needs. So please take care of it and learn how to train it.
Love it. Thank you, George. This is Dr. Rochel Marie Lawson, the Queen of Feeling Fabulous, and you have been listening and watching the Blissful Living Podcast. I should say listening or watching the Blissful Living Podcast whenever you're seeing this and hearing this. I want to thank our sponsors, Blissful Living for You at Blissful Living, the number 4, the letter U.com, as well as All Day Cable Incorporated at alldaycableinc.com. Please share this show. This is the information we need to get out. So the more you share it, the better it is for all of us. And until next time, I'm wishing you all peace to your mind, tranquility to your spirit, and wellness to your mind, body, spirit, emotional and physical well-being. Take good care, and goodbye.